Okay, we are here today with James T. Porter. Okay, and I'd like to just start then with some background information. If you want to tell us about when you were born, where, and your parents.
I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, on the south side,
Okay, what year?
1926.
What did your parents do?
My father died when I was a baby. He was 33 years old when he passed away.
That's too bad.
He died of TB.
Okay,
And my mother's boyfriend, from before she met and married my father, he showed up at the wake.
okay.
2 months later, they were married.
So then you grew up with him and your mom. And what did he do?
He was an automobile mechanic and then a union, belonged to the union. I forget the name of the union. I belonged to it too, but I was a carpenter. Millwright. He was a millwright.
Okay. And did you have any other brothers or sisters?
5.
Wow, that's a lot.
There was 3 boys by my father.
Uh-huh.
Then she had another boy, then a girl, and then another boy. There was 6 children.
Okay.
And there were 6 children or 6 children in my family and 6 children in my mother's family.
So then did your mom stay at home or did she work?
Oh, my mom was home all the time.
Okay, like too many kids.
Yeah.
And then did you go to school in Chicago?
I went to, I had a whole damn story written up. I went to Chicago Vocational High School.
Okay.
I graduated miraculously,
And what year did you graduate?
1944.
Okay. How?
Chicago Vocational was a trade school, all boys.
Okay.
I worked there for 1943 and part of 44.
What type of trade school, what kind of things did you cover in that?
Well, you name it, we had it. We had aviation, maintenance school,
Okay.
automobile school, machinist, that was what I was taking at the time, and carpentry. But in my 4th year of high school, I did not go to school for half a day. I worked a half a day.
Okay.
This part might interest you. In our 4th year, there was 7 or 8 of us fellows from the machine shop that we ended up getting a job working for the U.S. government at the University of Chicago.
Okay.
And we didn't know what we were doing or why we were doing it until after the war,
So what were you doing?
helping the Manhattan Project.
Oh.
Us young guys used to get the dirty jobs of cutting the different lengths and diameters of graphite rods. We didn't know what they were for. All we knew was we'd get, even the men that worked there, the journeymen, were just told, here's a drawing, make this. They didn't know why they were making it or what. But it was all for the Manhattan Project. You know what that was?
I vaguely do. You want to tell me more about it?
No, once I say atomic energy,
Okay.
that's what it was.
Right. And so you worked there then for about a year while you were in school?
1944.
Okay.
My 3rd and 4th year of high school.
Right.
And I got paid
That's good. Did they pay well?
very well. I got paid $1 an hour. Which at that time was a lot of money, especially for a 16, 17-year-old high school kid. In fact, my stepdad was only making about $1.25.
Wow. That is good money then. So, let's see, do you remember, you were in high school then when Pearl Harbor was attacked?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Do you remember anything specific about that day?
No,
No, you're pretty young still.
I was pretty young, I was enjoying what I was doing. But I can remember when it was over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about, while you were working at the University of Chicago, when you're 17, 18, did you or any
No,
of
I
your...
was 17. 18, I was gone.
Okay. Well, when you were in high school and you're getting a little bit older, did you or any of your friends, were you being worried about being drafted? Did you think about that you might have to be...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we all thought of that. That's why I went in the Navy.
Okay, so what year did you enlist?
I enlisted October 10th, 1944 in the United States Navy.
Okay, and so you were still living in Chicago at the time?
Oh, yes.
And then where did you go from there for training?
Great Lakes Naval Station, not Air Station.
Is there any reason why you picked the Navy?
Sure, so I wouldn't have to go in the mud.
Okay.
I hated that. I was a Boy Scout for a little while, and they took us on a trip, you know, a camping trip. And I said, I'm never gonna do this.
Okay. So what kind of training did you go through at the Great Lakes?
Fireman training, engineering training.
What were your duties?
At Great Lakes, nothing, just learn.
Okay. And how long were you there for?
What was it, 8, 10 weeks, 13 weeks, something like that. You went through basic training and then you went to engineering training. So I was a fireman first class when I came out of training.
Okay.
Got sent out to the Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
I forget the ship I went on, they transferred, but we left from there out to Ulysses, where I picked up the ship that I was assigned to.
Okay. So what state did you leave from? California?
Yeah, left from Shoemaker, California.
Okay. Do you remember how long the trip took?
I don't know, I was awful sick the first few days.
Okay. Do you remember at least
Yeah, took a couple of weeks.
a couple of weeks? Was it a very large ship that you were on then?
Nope.
No, it was a small ship.
Well, it was about 450 feet long,
Okay. How many people do you think were on it with you?
150.
Okay, that's pretty small then.
Yeah, we had a small complement. I could never get promoted.
And so you were basically sick the whole time, the whole trip?
No, I was sick for the first couple of days.
First couple of days.
After the mess I saw aboard ship, I swore I'd never get sick again.
Okay. Did you have any duties or while you were on the ship?
Aboard ship? Oh, yeah.
What did you have to do?
Take care of the boilers, operate the boilers.
Okay.
That's what a fireman did.
And then where did you go? Where did you land? Maybe it looks like. Did you go right to Okinawa?
No,
Okay.
no. We were out in some of the other islands, but we didn't have any action there. The ship had been just left Iwo Jima when I picked it up. But we didn't go back to Iwo. We went up to this place. That is,
Manila?
no,
Oh.
that is in the Philippines, Manila area.
Mm-hmm.
Oops. Here's the crew was me against the whole East Coast.
Okay.
I was the only one aboard ship from the Middle West.
So was it hard to get along with the other people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never got out of my hole down in the fire room.
So you went to the Philippines
This is my
then?
part of the crew. That's the Portuguese contention. This is the guys that one of them was one of our guys and his uncle. Here was the fantail of our ship. Here we heard the guy in the rigging, the song. Here I am on the tail of our ship, I think. You want stories too?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, if we pulled up at one small island, we're gonna have a beer party.
Uh-huh.
We went ashore, and it was empty, the Japs had gone, but they still had caves there. So we walked around and we saw this munitions on there, and there's big signs, no smoking. Well, we walked through, we had a bunch of junk,
Mm-hmm.
but we went in these caves, you know what we saw there? General Electric motors, and Japs had all kinds of our stuff.
They had stolen it?
Well, either that or they picked it up here, or they bought it from us years before.
That's funny.
Yeah. And everywhere I went, I met somebody I knew.
From back in Chicago, you would just
No,
meet
from
people
Chicago,
that
yeah.
you...
Fellow
Okay.
from Chicago. Went out to San Francisco, Liberty,
Mhm.
from Shoemaker, and I'm walking around, and I walk into that guy, that's me in the sailor suit, that's him in the Army uniform. And then, where were we? Not at Ulysses, somewhere out near Ulysses, we went out in the Marianas, and we were gonna refuel one of our big tankers. And I worked with what they call the oil king. We used to do the operations when it was time to take oil from a tanker or something. So my position was outside on the first deck of our ship, and we were only about 8 feet off the water on our main deck. And I hear somebody hollering, "Hey, Porter." "Hey, Porter." What the hell's called? I don't see anybody. Finally, this guy, whoever he was at the time, "Hey, Porter." He said, "Down here." I'm over the side of the ship. I looked down on the deck, taking care of the oil for filling us. There's a guy went to high school with.
Oh,
Out in the middle of the stinking ocean.
that's cool.
Yeah, there he is. Eddie Buchtanek. Hey, what a time.
But in the ship that you were working on, you didn't really have any friends that you went to high school with. It was mostly people from the east.
All from the east.
Okay.
I think the closest was Philadelphia.
Okay.
A lot of them were from Rhode Island.
Uh-huh.
That's where the Portuguese fellows were from. Yeah.
So what different islands did you go and visit?
To fight or just to visit?
In general, anywhere, where did you
I
travel
forget the
to?
names of the ones that we didn't fight at, but
Mhm.
we went to the Philippines.
Mhm.
From
How
there-
was your experience there? Did you meet any of the civilians, or what did you do while you were in there?
Oh, yeah, we were roamed in, and Manila was secured,
Mhm.
but it stunk.
Okay.
I couldn't tell. It was horrible. Everybody was cooking,
Okay.
and there was no real buildings
Mhm.
except for that.
That one that was right on the coast.
They called it White City over there, beautiful. But a lot of guys went ashore on Liberty and drank the whiskey they made, and they piled them up on the dock, and they were poisoned from it.
They died? Or
No,
were
they
just
didn't,
sick?
but they were awful sick. And all they did was take them to the dock where the ships would pick them up and just throw them on a pile.
But were they poisoned on purpose, or was it just a different kind of liquor that they weren't used to? It was just bad.
They were just sick from the whiskey. That was all they were celebrating. And the whiskey wasn't real. It was made over there.
Right, so it's different.
Yeah, it was different. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I guess we went to Okinawa. That was the only real battle I was in.
Mhm.
But we went there, and being in the fire room, I never got up to see who was firing what or what was going on. But our guy says, yeah, the old man says he don't want anybody on that 5-inch 38 gun, that big gun that this one guy is sitting in the back by, where was it? I know he's here somewhere. That big gun there,
Mhm.
that's on the back end of the ship. And our skipper says, I don't want anybody firing that gun. It was what they called a 5-inch 38.
Okay.
I got off of my watch and I said, I gotta see what's going on out there. And the lights were all out inside the ship outside. And the Japs were flying these kamikaze raids.
Mhm.
I opened the hatch a little bit, and I peeked out. Oh, there's no light escaping, nobody could see anything. And there was an AP, which is called auxiliary passengers. And they had fired their 5-inch 38 off of their fantail. Well, that's what must have alerted the Japanese kamikaze, the suicide planes.
Okay.
And when I peeked out, this one went right into his fantail. Blew up. I said, now I know why the old man says don't make any war with that thing back there. Then we went down to the Philippines again.
Okay.
Only this time we went down to Mindanao. Headhunters lived on that side of the bay, and the Filipinos lived on the other side.
Mhm.
And this was August
Okay.
1945. And we were out in the canoe, it was dark. And all of a sudden, all kinds of shooting starts. What the heck's going on? And all the gooks, we call them, said, war, make war again, Joe, make war again. No, that's our ship, it's all coming from here. But we got back, and everybody was drunk. That's the way it seemed. I don't know if our skipper was probably drunk, because he was a drunk to begin with.
Mhm.
And it was over. That was August 9th. But I know who dropped them bombs. One of them, anyhow, is in our family, our extended family.
Okay.
Yeah. But I didn't know that I helped make it. Not at that time.
So then you were in the Philippines when the war ended?
Yeah. Yeah, it was just, we were just securing all of the Philippine Islands.
Okay. Did you have to stay in the Pacific for a while after the bombs were dropped?
Yeah, I'm not finished yet.
Okay, good.
No, yes, I stayed there. We went from there, and went back to Okinawa. Then from Okinawa, we went up to Japan
Oh.
and Tokyo Bay.
Mhm.
But we went over to, not Tokyo, not the city of Tokyo, but the other one, Yokohama.
Okay.
And we pulled in to the dock. And the dock was like walking up here, nobody broke anything. There wasn't even any windows broken on the dock. How did that happen? Then I look at the ship next to us, it was my uncle's ship. He was aboard ship there. So he couldn't get off the ship.
So you can go talk to him?
Yeah, oh yeah, he said he's coming over, you know.
Uh-huh.
They wouldn't let him come. So I called my officer, which one is he? The engineering officer. He's here somewhere. There he is. And he said, oh, I'll see if the old man will let you go ashore. Well, by the time that happened, we had to pull out into the bay, in Tokyo Bay. And then I said, I gotta pass. And the old man says, if you don't get back, you're stuck here, you're AWOL. Okay, I'm going. So I took off, took a small boat in with somebody who was going in. Got off to see my uncle. they had just come back from fixing the only building standing that you could see was a convent.
Okay.
And they put electricity back into the building for them and fixed it up, because there were no other buildings in Yokohama. It was just like the top of this table, all burned down, blown up. And we had a chat for a couple of hours. Then I got back out to my ship. And then the storm hit, typhoon.
Oh.
And aboard ship, when you're at bay, in bay like that and you're anchored, you're supposed to have an anchor watch.
Okay.
Well, somebody evidently wasn't watching our ship. And we're getting blown, dragging anchor all over the place. And we had orders down in the fire room, do not answer bells. And somebody up there is ringing, they want to start going. We are not answering any bells. Finally, the skipper comes down, he says, answer the GD bells. And somebody did. Well, we're not to do what you're told. So we built up the fire and they started the engines. We finally got our power back, but meanwhile, we chopped off some other ships' anchor chain with our screws when we started them up. Another one, there was a LST anchored out there and was having a hard time. And our ship came along, and the LST has inner doors and outer doors. And we tore their outer door off. And it was hanging open. And our guys were watching. This is during the day, we were watching. And one of their chiefs climbed out on this half a door. They grabbed the other, put the other, and put a chain around it, and they finally closed it. So they were safe after that.
Okay, that's good.
And we didn't even hurt our ship. So then after that, a couple of days, we were gone. I think, no, we didn't go back there. We ended up going back to the States in a couple of months after. This was all at the time when they signed the treaty, you know, surrender and all that. But that LST, when we were coming back to the States about 3 months later, we're pulling up, and the guys that were on deck that saw what happened, and they saw this, they knew the number of the LST, and here we are gonna dock right next to it. He says, those guys are gonna kill us. And we're pulling in, and the whole crew on that LST is cheering for us. You know why?
Why?
They went right straight home after that.
Oh, okay.
It took them 8 weeks to get back to the United States. An LST only does about 10 knots to begin with, and they must have done about 5 knots all the way back to the United States from the Philippines, from Japan.
So when you went back, did you come right from Japan straight to the United States then?
Yeah.
Okay, so probably did take you guys maybe only about 2 weeks?
Probably 3.
Not 8 weeks, so.
3 weeks.
Okay.
Oh yeah, we didn't go much faster. 14 knots was the ship made 20 knots on its, when they had a shakedown, when they built it. 3 weeks later, it could only get 14, 15 knots.
Okay. So how long were you in the Pacific then? Like a year and a half?
Oh, I went out in January, I come back, or February, something like that, and I came back in September,
Okay.
following year.
Okay.
And then I was hot to trot to get home to my girlfriend. And I wrote some bad letters. I was really mad because when I got home, I got 30-day leave. But that's over, and I was back. But they didn't send me back to my ship. They sent me to a new one. I said, what am I going to import this thing for? Then I had to spend another almost a year overseas.
Doing what?
Riding around, because when I signed up as a regular Navy, my enlistment was duration of the war and 1 year.
Okay,
Boy, and they almost made me reach that 1 year.
right.
It was 1 year and it was 9 months later that I got discharged.
Okay, so when you had to board another ship, you had a whole different crew then?
You
That
have
you had to
all
work
different
with?
people, yeah.
What kind of things did you do, or where did you go?
Firemen.
Mm-hmm.
I forget the place you went because I didn't care. I just biding my time.
Okay, so
You
there
know,
wasn't like any combat or anything?
No,
it
there
was
was
just...
no combat or
Okay.
anything. No. The only real combat, like I say, I was in
Okinawa?
Okinawa. Yeah, that was enough. But my wife's brother was killed in North Africa. He was in college and enlisted. And he was first generation in this country. And he got killed in a tank in North Africa. I said, I often wonder if it was the French that killed him or the Germans. And then, let's see, every male in my family has been in the service. I had a brother that was a year older than me, was in the Air Force, the 7th Air Force in Italy. He got shot down twice, never even got scratched.
Oh, that's good.
Then my Uncle Jack's brother, and he had 2 other younger brothers, one in the Marines, one in the Air Corps. Now, the one in the Marines was in every battle in the Pacific. His brother, Ray, he was Air Force man, but he wasn't a pilot. And he didn't fly on the Enola Gay, the first one that dropped him out, but he was on the boxcar when they dropped in Nagasaki. He was on that ship. He come home and him and his brother argued. His brother said, yeah, he said, I spent 3.5 years out there, all that fighting and that. You go up in the air once and you get your name in the book. And I had my next brother, he passed away, he was a young man when he died. He was in the Air Force too, but he was in Korea War. He was assigned to headquarters or something over there. And he spent 3.5 years over there. Yeah. And then after him, I had a crazy brother, a half brother. He went and joined the Army, 20-year man. He had 5 children, 4 boys and a girl. And he went over to Nam. Then his younger brother, my other youngest brother, he was at Nam, but he was in the Navy, aboard the USS Kearsarge. And that's about it.
Okay, so you were done with your service then in 1946? Right?
That's when I left.
Okay, and what did you do after that?
Well, I came home. There was no jobs left at the university.
Okay.
That was all washed up, moved somewhere else. But years later, I was reading the newspaper and I find that this guy talked about lithium poisoning. I said, how come? What's that from? Because I got caught once in a trick. Guys, there was a big block of iron, looked like iron, sitting on the top of this bench. And they said, Porter, I bet you can't lift this. I said, it can't be that big, even if it's 200 pounds, I think I can lift it from there. Yeah, you won't budge that thing. Then put your money where your mouth is. We don't want your money. So, okay, so I go over and I wrap my arms around it. No, that's not lithium, beryllium.
Okay.
Yeah, beryllium poison. I wrap my arms around it, I get ready to lift it. I almost fell on my back. Whoop, it come up, it only weighed about 2 pounds. It was beryllium.
Okay.
And after I saw this in the paper, I said, geez, that could be me too. But I read that you had to be machining it or grinding it, and the dust
Oh,
causes
breathe it
the
in.
poisoning. I never did that, but,
That's good.
yeah.
So did you stay in Illinois for a long time, or when did you move to Michigan?
Well, then I come home, and I waited a year, and wife and I got married.
Okay.
But I didn't have a job the day before, or Friday before we got married. I was a carpenter, it was an off-season.
Okay.
So when we came back from our honeymoon, I didn't tell my wife that I didn't have a job, not when we got married. So I went down to the union hall, and I went right back to work.
Okay, that's good.
But 6 months later, at Christmas time, I got laid off again. No way I could avoid telling her, because there wasn't that much work done. And everybody said, "Why don't you get a steady job?" So they talked me into working for Commonwealth Edison.
Okay.
I finally went to work for them, and 41 years after that, I quit.
What did you do there?
I started out working for the purchasing department, the
Okay.
stores division.
Mm-hmm.
Decided I couldn't make any money in that. Then I moved into the power plant generating station. Started working in there. That was more for me. So I worked there way out in the southeast side. Then I ended up working after I was married. Well, I was married in 47. I started with Edison in 48. And then in 55, we bought our first house.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't have our first girl until 1951. We were
Okay.
married 4 years. And then 3 years later, we had a son.
Mm-hmm.
And then 3 years after that, we had another girl.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere in between there was 5 years, I don't know. But I had 4 girls and 2 boys.
Okay, that's a lot.
Now I got 4 granddaughters and
Mhm.
4 grandsons.
Okay. So then you retired, what, maybe in the early 90s?
Just about
Yeah.
1989.
Okay, and did you work
Ever.
in Chicago or Illinois the whole time you were at that company?
No.
No. And you moved to Michigan?
I ended
or-
up in nuclear plant.
Oh.
I transferred into quality assurance.
Uh-huh.
They asked me to get into it. That was back in 1975. The whole family moved to Rockford, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
And we were done having children then. And, well, I worked at Byron in quality assurance, which got to be too much for me.
Mm-hmm.
Too many foreigners, too much paper, and I used to have to travel too.
Mm-hmm.
But I made a lot more money. And I didn't have to work 7, 8 days a week. It was 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Yeah, I enjoyed it at first, but it got to be a pain in the neck.
What have you been doing with your time since you've retired?
What have I been doing with my time?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when my wife was still around, I wasn't retired then, but this is,
Huh?
bet you'll never guess whose house that is.
I don't even know. I don't know.
His name was Harry.
Hey, Truman?
Yeah, yeah, that was his house.
Oh, where is that?
That's in Missouri.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a summer home up in northwestern Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
We still go up there every summer.
Uh-huh.
Not to our place where we sold that. It costs too much money now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right when I did travel in Europe, after I retired,
Mm-hmm.
we went to Europe a couple of times. Went to Ireland. The only place I never liked was France.
Didn't like France?
Parts of it, people were lousy.
Are they rude?
There's the word for them. They're worse than rude, believe me. We were in Monaco,
Mm.
and the gambling hall wasn't, casino was not open yet, but it was open for tours and that. And these guards, they got uniforms on, man, they're hot. And they're knocking women's hats off. And if they've got their purse, they take their purse, you gotta check this in, and take it away from them. And then the first experience we had with the French was my stepfather. He used to say, well, we were here, our family was here before yours. I said, yeah, when did they get here? He says, I knew when they came. He says, 1772. Yeah, I said, you were supposed to help us with our war against the English, but all you ever did was desert your own army. He'd shut up after that. But he was French and Irish, and he had a temper.
French and Irish. Interesting.
Yeah, I never realized it until a cousin of mine told me about my stepfather. She says, you know, he hated your father. I said, why? Because he was your mother's boyfriend before that. And he beat your dad up the night before. He's about that much bigger than my dad.
Okay.
And my cousin, she says, take a look at the wedding pictures. Sure enough, my dad's eyes were all dark. I thought that was, she said, no, that's from when he beat him up.
Do you ever go to any Navy like reunion things?
Nope.
No.
But I have belonged to the American Legion for the past 55 years, or 54, or something like that. Commonwealth Edison, post number 118.
Okay.
No, I haven't been active in that or politics, like you do. And I'm not going to be here much longer either. My son's leaving. He's got to move.
Okay. So you're just gonna go with him?
They're going to make me go with them.
They're gonna make you go with him?
I have nobody. If they leave, I have nobody up here in my family.
Okay.
Well, my family's pretty much spread around anyhow.
Yeah.
I used to have him in California, but he passed away. And there's one, I got a grandson in Atlanta, Georgia. I got a brother, my youngest brother is in White, Georgia, out in the country, in the mountains. My other daughter is down in Memphis. And then my son, who was this one up here, he says, yeah, well, I called Barb, that's the one that lived on there, and to find out what it feels like. She says, well, I've got a lot of practice. She says, we've moved 7 times because of her husband's job. I said, well, so I've got to move again. I don't have to, but I'm not going to stay up here alone.
It's too cold.
No, this isn't cold here. You sound like all the other people. No, it's not cold here.
Okay.
It's cold in Chicago, but it's colder where I live, out in the middle of Illinois, up by Wisconsin. When we were having close to 0, they had 20 below.
Well, I don't think I have any more questions. Do you have any other memories that you would like to tell us about?
No, I don't think so. I had it written down. I think I got most of it.
Okay.